Call the meeting to order for the public hearing on the budget. And Jim Davis, Public Works Director, will lead us in the invocation. If you'll stay standing, please, for the pledge.
Mighty God, we give thanks for this beautiful day. Grant our county commissioners wisdom in budgeting the revenues and expenditures of this great county. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mine's fine.
And County Administrator Mr. Baird will give a budget overview.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Your mic's not on, John.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. In front of you, we have the proposed 2007 and 2008 budget for the Board of County Commissioners. The proposed budget is $432,108,207. This is down $68 million, or about 14% from last year. I think the most important thing about this budget is how does it affect our citizens and our taxpayers. Presently, there is no increase in millage rates. As the state came out with a state mandate that counties and cities had to reduce the budget, we reduced our millage rate in the general fund 5%, in the MSTU 5% as was required, and in the transportation fund 3%. I mean, in the emergency services district 3% as was required by law. We've also got a reduction of about 5% in our solid waste rates. There aren't any increases presently in recreation, utilities, building fees, or golf course. In other words, this budget has no rate increases whatsoever in it. To get to this point, we had to cut a total of 56 positions out of the budget, which accounted for about $3.3 million. We have property insurance increases of about $1.1 million. We have health insurance increases around $385,000. We've reduced our overtime about 16% or $605,000. One of the things that we've had to wrestle with is also the increase in fuel costs. The budget does include COLA adjustments for our employees, and that's about $1,642,000. We also reduced travel expenses for all the departments about 30%. This was all trying to meet the budget requirements that the state had confronted us with. There's also been changes in revenue. We've seen drastic reductions in our half-cent sales tax revenue, about a 14% decrease from last year. State revenue sharing decreased 2.7%. Our fuel tax revenue is down 7%. There is good news, however. Our interest earnings we are projecting to be up about $235,000 or 17%, and that's just due to the fact that the Fed increased the Federal Reserve rates for solid investments. The aggregate millage rate for the county, which no one pays, it's just the average, there isn't any one taxpayer that will pay this rate, is about 5.1726, and that is 4.4% below rollback. The general fund millage rate that we're proposing in front of you tonight is 3.0526. That is 5% below rollback. It is 0.1607 below the rollback rate of 3.2133. The proposed general fund budget is $83,520,452. That's 3.4% below last year. We've decreased 10 full-time positions in the general fund. The BCC departments have a decrease of $1.3 million in the general fund, or 6.2%. We know that all the constitutionals are also in the general fund and state agencies. This was the hardest fund to balance because of it has so many different entities that are supported from it that aren't revenue producing. The elimination of the positions eliminated $657,000 from that budget. Overtime reductions made up about $68,000 reduction. Due to the opening of the jail, we had an increase of 107. The new addition to the jail, we had an increase of about 175,000. The cost of the new buildings that were constructed this year that just opened, our EOC, Emergency Operations Center, the supervisors of elections, and the two new buildings here, all four of those buildings, we have a operating increase of $235,000 due to that. And that's an overview of the general fund.
I guess what we need to do is, you've hit the millage, but we need to open for public comments. And the proposed millage, again, is 3.0526 and is now 5% below rollback. The proposed budget is $83,520,452. And on the general fund, we'll open that for public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this? Coffee.
My name is Frank Coffey. I live at 1200 Redlands Walk.
I don't know if that's on.
Is there a green light on that?
I came down the other day to find out how all this worked, but when you get to be 85, you forget very quickly. Anyway, I'd like to speak this evening about, first of all, about the sheriff's budget. I had the opportunity this year of being able to sit in. I was invited to sit in with his officers talking about budget. I was limited as to what I could say or couldn't say, but I did have the opportunity to recognize some of the problems as far as the sheriff is concerned. This is a summary of the budgets as far as the sheriff is concerned, and you can see there it's $42,771,040. It includes 534 employees. The sheriff has a law enforcement of 314, 23 are court services, and 197 are correction. The sheriff met with his staff, and I was allowed to sit in the first week of March. There was meetings held most of the week discussing numbers of subjects, particularly relative to capital expenditures. The next item is I want to show is an item relative to the budget as far as law enforcement is concerned. This is a little bit hard to read, but you can see here that as far as the personnel is concerned is in the upper part, and you can see there's a line there that says attrition, and it's about $923,000. And it's my understanding that that line relates to people who may leave, who may be not hired yet, may be retiring, and so that the salaries that normally would have been in the budget has been deducted, and that amounts to $923,000, leaving a budget for personnel of a little over $22 million. Should note there was an increase in overtime work, and some of that I clearly understand, because when we were at the meeting and having the discussion, At about 4:30, all in one room, the sheriff people got an emergency call of a bank robbery. Well, that's the time that the change of shift occurs. So obviously, the day shift was involved in it, and then the afternoon shifts. So I can understand that there's a need to have some overtime in your budget. As far as the corrections concerned, we have a similar situation here, on which the real budget for personnel is a little over $13 million. Again, the attrition of about $500,000. And it should be noted also that there's nothing shown as far as the need for capital equipment in the law enforcement, the corrections, or the services of the court. The court has a similar situation as far as the salaries are concerned, and again, the line for attrition of $75,836. Again, no capital equipment listed in any of the items at all. The next items that I'd like to talk on very briefly is the number of employees that the sheriff has increased his staff over the past few years. As you recall, when the jail was approved, the sheriff was asking for about 70 employees for the new jail, and wisely so, he put half of those employees in 1 year and the half in the other year, so they wouldn't all show up, because he knew he couldn't hire them all at the same time because the jail wasn't even ready to be occupied. And this past year, in addition, he had 28 more employees added to his staff. Taking a look at the salaries, the sheriff has always put forth a copy of the salaries for all of his employees, their base salaries plus all their benefits. But in some of those instances, he does not have an employee number for a certain person because maybe they haven't hired it yet, haven't replaced it, and therefore he still puts the money in his salary budget. And then eventually then he can back that money out due to attrition and not being able to hire that quickly. And so what I did, I took time to take a look at the number of people, for example, that did not have an employee number. And I looked at each of the three main parts of his staff, this being the law enforcement, which indicates he's about 24 people short as far as next year's budget is concerned. And if you take those numbers and you see there's 24 openings, that generates about almost $1 million in salaries. By the time you take the salaries plus benefits, it comes up to about $1.3 million. That information was furnished to the budget, and I used that budget to take a look at. Had a similar situation as far as the correction is concerned. I won't go through all the numbers there, but just to give you an example again, the correction was showing about 27 positions had not been filled. And if you take those 27 positions and take their salaries plus their benefits, you can see the benefits total about $1.5 million. And I can understand the problems of being able to get replacement when the people retire. I understand the situation of getting employees to fill open positions. I also took the time to take a look at the salaries of the employees last year versus this year. And I took a look at each of the groups, the corrections, for example, and there's some odd numbers that come in there as to the salaries are concerned. For example, I will not take the time to go through all of this, but just a couple of examples I've looked at as far as the salary increases. And then I found a real stranger in there, a minus salary. So I know dealing with 530 employees, there's an opportunity to make a number of mistakes when you talk about how much salary might be allowed for it from one year to the next. And again, as you probably can see, the average salary increase for the employees were about 6%. You have some strangers in there, maybe 103%. And so they vary all over. And it's, I looked at about 124 salaries just to get a feel as to what was going on. The next thing I took a look at and was the capital equipment requests. I went back and looked at the requests for capital equipment back in the budget year starting in 201, 202. And you can see it was almost $1 million. And when the sheriff presented his budget for 206 and 207, initial budget he had for capital equipment was zero. But then the impact fees were available of $368,000, so that was added to his budget. Then, because the sheriff had openings on his staff that he hadn't filled, he was able to accumulate $1,276,150 and got the permission of the board to transfer that to his capital equipment so that he could buy capital equipment this year rather than waiting until after November where the prices probably would be higher. So totally then, for the budget 2006-2007, the sheriff expects to spend about $1,644,000. Some of the typical equipment that the sheriff is looking at is from the impact fees, computers, laptops, vehicles, and as you know that there must be a 5-year life for those items in order to qualify for use of the impact fees. And in addition to that, the sheriff took a look at other equipment that he would need, which amounted up to $1,000,000. And in that, he will be purchasing about 27 new vehicles, because I think the last time they had a large purchase of vehicles was about 2 years ago. The sheriff has worked extremely hard, and his staff has worked hard to look at the budget from the various angles. And it is not an easy task when you're dealing with the $42 million, which represents about 53% of the total amount for the this particular category. The one thing that would be of concern to me is that taking out the money out of this budget this year for salaries attrition lowers his budget. It's a question then next year as whether there will be a need for additional capital equipment. Where is that money coming from? Most of the capital equipment that the sheriff intends to get this year before November maybe can be carried over. But I think there's a real concern down the road future from what we hear about the Florida legislative body, what they might do and might not do. It's going to be a real challenge to keep the expenditures down. And I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? This is a public hearing. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Laura Alexander, Director of the Treasure Coast Food Bank, and I was allowed to make a presentation yesterday at your public meeting and have met individually with commissioners. And I'm here today because some really hard decisions had to be made. I do not envy Administrator Bard, Jason Brown, the Budget Director, and others who have to make very difficult decisions when revenues are not where they need to be. But I want to say to you that I believe that Treasure Coast Food Bank is a regional organization serving Indian River County and serving many of the most vulnerable citizens here, also has had to make sacrifices this year in budget cuts and cut staffing. We've had reductions in not only proposed cuts here in Indian River County, but through FEMA funds, through other government funds, through private funds. And I believe we do a good job in going for the primary source of our funding to the private individuals, to foundations, other than county, state, and federal government. It's really important that we keep a balance in our budget so that we don't, when we do have deficits, especially, at taxpayers' expense, that we aren't becoming reliant on those things. The county has a program, and I really commend the county for having this program that helps nonprofits, struggling nonprofits. I came here 4 years ago. I started my first food bank in Sarasota, Florida in 1991. And I was asked to come here because there was a struggling food bank here that was about ready to shut down, quite frankly. And my predecessor, although had a great heart, it was just a struggle. And I came here recognizing that at every systemic need of this food bank, needs to be met. And we didn't come to county government first to ask for funding. We went to private foundations. We did our own fundraising. We started building support from individuals and corporations and food donors. And it was one of the local foundations here in Indian River County that apprised us of the program here in Indian River, in Indian River County government, that would allow struggling nonprofits to come and apply for a grant up to 3 years, and then you would roll off to give other nonprofits a chance to apply. We applied the first year and were successfully funded. We applied the second year and were successfully funded. And we came back this last and third year recognizing that we wanted to build upon the struggles that we've had, but also the great success in serving the citizens of Indian River County and hoping we get that help. The first year we were a little over $14,000 were apprised to our budget from the county. Last year, $20,700. And this year, with increasing need, we did ask for $30,000. And in the scheme of the county's budget, I know that's not a huge amount of money, but to our food bank, that's a lot of money. And it feeds a lot of people. It would allow us to provide 75,000 meals here in Indian River County. And as you all are hopefully aware by now, over the last few days of education, we are the hub of providing food assistance. We are the largest food assistance program that serves the 4 counties. And what we do is we bring in a centralized donated food to give to other nonprofit feeding programs so that they can leverage their funds. So the investment in the food bank is not just wise dollars because of the leveraging what we can do with a dollar. For every dollar we're provided, we can provide 5 meals. It also leverages funds to other nonprofits so that they can have a cost-effective source to receive their food to help those in need. As we talked about, the poverty statistic here in Indian River County is about 10%. Almost 12,500 of our citizens here in Indian River County are in poverty, and poverty is the biggest derivative of hunger. The food bank, over the last year, was able to put 321,802 pounds of food into Indian River County. That was a value of $479,485 based on the wholesale value of a pound of food that's done every year as a market valuation by the America's Second Harvest Organization and KPMG, the National Food Bank Network, and of course a leading accounting firm. So what I'm coming to ask Indian River County today is that we have been cut out of the budget this last year, out of the nonprofit fund, 100%, the $30,000. And in talking with Mr. Baird, I know there were some tough choices that had to be made. There were other nonprofits that maybe didn't get funded. Some nonprofits, as were listed in the budget here, have been cut as much as 50%. But I'm here to appeal to you that our basic of needs, food and shelter, are things that we ask for partnering with Indian River County on. We're not asking you to bear all of the burden, not half of the burden, a very small percentage of the help that it needs to get food assistance to our most vulnerable citizens here. It appears that the Mental Health Collaborative did receive an increase in this fund, and I know that Mr. Baird shared with me that for many years you've been waiting for a mental health system here and that this collaborative has been established. I recognize that. I value that. The Mental Health Association is actually a member of the food bank. We have 4 programs that we support of theirs with food. And I would venture to say that those folks that need assistance through the mental health services would not be there if they weren't getting basic sustenance of food assistance. So I'm just asking us to look at priorities in a tough year. I'm asking you to please consider reinstating either all of the funding or at least partial of the funding, this being our last year. I ask you to look into your hearts and put yourself and those who are the least of us in Indian River County and consider giving the food bank some of the funds that we've requested in this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Spencer Simmons, 118 43rd Avenue. I just want to do just really kind of general on the budget. I didn't go through it and everything, but just some ideals to think about. I don't believe that budgeting should be that hard. I had looked up a few things basically from our history on taxation and a few things that might help as you're doing this. I think the first motivation of taxation, and this was said by President Andrew Jackson, and he said, "No people can hope to perpetuate their liberties who long acquiesce in a policy which taxes them for objects not necessary to the legitimate and real wants of the government." And if we, and you basically as our government, really take a look at the budget and only use the budget for the needs of our county, not always the wants of everybody out here. I know that we use our taxation for economic engineering, which I'm opposed to. You pit one business against another. You use taxation, even in a point here with Piper, using public funds to put a company ahead of other companies, which I don't believe it should be done. I believe that it was stated by Chief Justice John Marshall in 1819, the power to tax involves the power to destroy. And we need to be sure that as we're looking at our budget, and like I say, I don't think the budget could be as hard if we really stuck to the principles of only using the taxes for the needs, not always the wants of everybody. And Lord Alexander Taylor in 1770, and this was at the time that America was established as an independence from Great Britain, and he was a Scottish historian in Edinburgh, Scotland. And he was doing a study on the fall of the Athenian Republic, and that was 2,000 years prior to that. And he said, democracy is always temporary in nature. He never believed that they could stand for very long. He said it simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. Now we're going to have people come up here, and they're all going to want something. And if it's not a legitimate need, and, you know, we got people here that's going to want, you know, like the food bank and stuff. And, you know, as a Christian and stuff, I personally involve myself in charitable giving. But it's not government's place to be the charitable giver. It's the people out in our community that are supposed to give. Because once you start taking money from the people and deciding who gets what, when, and how, you're pitting one group against another. He went on to say that from the moment on, the majority always votes for the candidate who promised the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history has been about 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progressed through the following sequences: from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, and abundance to complacency, and that's where I think we are at today. A complacency leads to apathy, and apathy to dependency, and then we're back to bondage. So, you know, if you really looked at your budget and really pulled out everything that really is not a legitimate need of our county here, the police, the fire, roads, the true legitimate needs, I think you have a lot left over. And then that money can give back to the people, and then the people can, out of their heart, decide who they want to give their money to. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, for the record, my name is John Romano. I'm the CEO of New Horizons. Much of what I'm going to say here, you folks have already heard, so I know in part I'm preaching to the choir, but I just wanted to mention a few key things. New Horizons has been providing services in this county for quite a few years, and we appreciate all you've done for New Horizons, and more importantly, the people that we serve. I gave you, the last time we spoke, a report called the Units of Service Report, and it basically tells you what we did last fiscal year. And I just wanted to remind you that we did deliver almost $3.4 million worth of services, and that's using the state rate, which is always a lesser rate than what you could get in the private sector. But more importantly, I think it's important to note that investing in the mental health system is very smart policy. I liken what we do to the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department. We save lives, and we do it every day. When you consider what you would invest up front in a mental health system where we keep people out of deep-end services like emergency rooms, like crisis stabilization units, like prisons and jails, you're really investing very wisely. Another point I'd like to mention is the other counties. I know you probably don't care that much about what the other counties have done, but I just wanted you to know that the other counties have not cut us anything. And I do appreciate the $20,000 at the last meeting that Commissioner Bowden put back into the budget with your support. So what I'm asking you to do is consider bringing us back to a zero cut. If you can't see your way to do that, then at least try and minimize our cut to, you know, another $20 or whatever $1,000. Obviously, I would prefer that you have no cut, but at least if you would consider, you know, putting something back in, that would be appreciated. Do you have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to be heard? Mr. Johnson?
Bob Johnson, Carlin Subdivision. The item 128, Children's Services, the narrative is a little misleading in the write-up, in that the ordinance allows for a certain millage to be expended up to a certain point. In the write-up, it has like there's a decrease in the children's services, when in reality there hasn't been a decrease in children's services. The county commission is allowed to go up to a certain millage rate, but the narrative in the write-up it would infer that the children's services are taking a cut, and that's not a fact. The children's services has been more than generous over the years to the different nonprofits that submit requests, and we're more than generous this year as we have in the past. So I'd like to ask that maybe that be more of a positive narrative than a negative. That's one comment. Also, in the material that we have, the budget indicates that it's as of March 31st, 2007. And then you go on to as you look to other columns in your budgeting process, you go to the next column and it has a departmental request. And then it goes to the board approval, an increase and decrease. And my question is, what is the process of determining the process of accounting for the money and how it's spent between March of 07 and into this fiscal year? There's no indication in the material that we have as to what the projected expenses or revenues are for that time frame. So I'd just like to ask that question.
Bob, what we do is we lock down the budget halfway through the year so that it's not a moving target, and that's where we use a comparison from year to year. March 31st is 6 months through the year. So what we've done is we've locked down that column, and that's what departments have spent as of that date. And we do it every year. We lock it down, and that's what we use as a comparison, because you're halfway through the year, you have an indication. If we didn't, these numbers would be constantly changing, and I think it would be confusing to the public. We're always accused of everything changing, the numbers changing. So we lock it down as of March. It's obviously a budget is a fluid document, and this might be a case of giving too much information, actually. We've got too many columns here that sometimes the public finds confusing. And as far as the child services, we try to do that in a positive manner. What we're trying to do is give them credit for reducing their budget request from, we asked them to reduce it, and we were trying to do that in a positive fashion and thank them for coming in as we had requested under last year's. It wasn't meant to be a negative thing. It was a positive thing, and I hope.
Well, we started off with $50,000 a year, and we've come up to $1 million. So I think the county's been very generous over the years in granting money to the children's services. Over the years, there's another next question. Emergency services. How do you distinguish on emergency services taxing between the emergency service division that's part of the county commission organization and the emergency services taxing district? How do you distinguish what goes in what category and what goes to the taxing district and what goes into the line item for the county administration?
The emergency services taxing district is a special district that was created for fire, paramedic, and ambulance service only, for those services. And it's a special district that includes everywhere in the county except for Indian River Shores. The emergency services department you see in the general fund is our emergency services department that deals with hurricane preparedness and things like that. And it's under John King. Actually, John King, who's also over the emergency services district, shows up in the general fund. Does that help you?
Well, how do you distinguish when you need to buy a fire truck, whether it goes into
the fire truck has to go in the emergency services district. It does not go in the general fund.
So the ordinance on the emergency district has criteria for what goes in what category, or can you?
It was a special district created for fire, ambulance, and paramedic services for everywhere but Indian River Shores. It's a special district. All those expenses, all fire-related expenses, equipment, operating, all paramedic, ambulance, service expenses are in that fund. Our emergency services in the general fund is for hurricane preparedness, other emergency items. Also, you'll see the FP&L nuclear grant, which is also part of, it's not a fire or an ambulance service. It's another emergency service.
Can you move the money back and forth within the two items?
We could not. Fire and direct fire and ambulance and paramedic costs have to stay in the special district. We do not move it back and forth.
I've looked over the budget, and I still think that as a taxpayer and being one that just got my trim report and had a considerable increase in my taxes this year, I still think that there's room for another 1% reduction in the budget. Thank you very much.
And let me address that. The tax bill, over 50% of your tax bill is a school district. The state legislators almost mandated school districts to go up, was it 7%, 6.5% or 7%. We were required to cut 5% below rollback. So there's a good chance, even though counties, cities, and all special districts had to cut between 5 and 3% in this county, that your tax bill went up. It's only because the school district went up. It's only because the school district went up. We're down on your tax bill if you have a homesteaded house. It's the school board that's causing the tax bills to go up if you are a homesteaded piece of property. And the state legislators came out with that requirement.
Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Steve Myers, Teamsters Local 769, 3400 43rd Avenue. I'm a representative of the Labor and Trades Unit of the employees that work here at the county. Also, we represent about 750 employees within this county, and I'm a 35-year resident of this county. So I sent you a packet on August the 28th, and I just wanted to point out a few items that I think that the county can reduce the budget by not privatizing some services. The first item was that I noticed that was in the budget workshop was the proposal to subcontract the mowing of the utilities operation center, the new facility that you built out there. Those services are currently being provided by the county. So whatever you do to subcontract it is only going to be an increase to the budget, not a decrease. So I would encourage you as you go through this budget process, hopefully before the final budget, that you would take a look at that, make any adjustments to it that you see fit. I don't think this is a time that we need to be spending additional monies on privatizing the mowing of a facility that's already being mowed with county workers. The second, and it's my understanding that Commissioner O'Brien brought the issue up yesterday at your regular Board of County Commission meeting. So it's my understanding that that item on the sludge facility was tabled and is going to be addressed at the next County Commission meeting. So I'll hold my comments on that issue that I want to discuss today and wait till next Tuesday and do that then. But after listening to County Administrator Baird's comments yesterday at the meeting, I was, we're going to be looking at more privatization. Everything that the county seems to have done lately on privatization fails. Okay, if you take a look at when they privatized the meter readers in this county, it was a complete failure. Okay, only to have to go back and hire new staff to go back and retrain them. And try to get the job done the right way, where people aren't just making up numbers on people's meters, and that's exactly what the private contractor was doing. If you're going to want control of your operations, you're going to have control of the employees. And the only way you're going to do that is to have the employees work for you. You can't be subcontracting all of your work out and expect to have the quality of work you need. And there's going to be, if you look at the numbers and on that issue, and we'll talk about it again next week. I think if the county would not have privatized the service, there would have been a significant savings to this county. It's just, in my opinion, a waste of taxpayers' dollars just to simply, for the sake of trying to privatize something. The third and final issue that I have this evening was the issue that was also, I noticed, that was in the budget workshop of revising the the employee salary schedule, the increases. Current policy is on the employee's anniversary date that they receive their anniversary increase, and it's my understanding that it's worded in your budget that you want to revise that. I doubt that you want to revise it upward. So I guess my comment to you is, are you changing county policy on revising the employees' salary schedules?
We're in negotiations, and so obviously we have to negotiate anyone under your that falls under you. Right now we are not planning. There's still going to be a merit on their anniversary date if they are not at the top of their range, which is the same for employees who are in the bargaining unit or not. So we haven't changed that.
Okay.
And we'll bargain in good faith, just like I hope you will. But a few items I would like to address. We've had some very successful privatizations. The solid waste, the landfill, we privatized that. A very good savings, and we've got good service. Golf course maintenance, privatized that, a huge success. It's still less than it was when we were doing it ourselves. We will always look at what is in the best interest of the taxpayer and the public, and we'll look at all our options. Our employees are very important, but with the state change and the state law, with the cutbacks, we are going to have to look at all our options, and that's why I made that comment. It's a reality. It's an unfortunate thing. I think it'd be good for you to spend some time lobbying at the state and maybe get some changes in the state level, so there aren't the required cutbacks and reductions at the local level. That would help a lot.
All right. Thanks. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Anyone else? Okay. We'll close the public comment and consider, commissioners, any proposed changes to the tentative budget?
Joe, the one issue that Mr. Myers brought up on the mowing, is that currently being done by our current staff and we don't have to hire additional people? Or
what we've done is we're looking at one of the reductions is a maintenance we're going to reduce a position in lawn maintenance tech and have it privatized. The cost of privatizing it is $54,000 was the bid. The cost of the employee is $56,000 without the cost of the vehicle, the equipment that's required, which is another 20-some thousand in capital. If you amortize that over 5 years, it's another $4,000. We're looking at all of this, so that's why we made that decision. So the bid we feel is definitely lower than what it costs us to do it internally. And those are hard decisions, but we owe it to the public to look at all of that and make sure the public's getting the best bang for their dollar, and we're trying to deliver service as cheap as possible.
okay. And that position you're eliminating then is one that's currently filled?
I'll have to check to see. I think we moved we're moving the person. Whenever we do something like this, we try and move them. We're not always successful. When we had to reduce the building department mid-year this year, when we had to lay off 13 people, we weren't as successful. We do attempt to place people. An example is with the commission office. We're placing someone there that was laid off right now. We do attempt to do that. It's important to us.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Joe, would you please address a bit the food bank?
Yes. That we looked at the food bank. You know, we've got a lot of requests from good organizations. Just because we did not fund an organization doesn't mean it was a good organization. They're a great organization. It's a case of having limited resources this year. We looked at the food bank, and some of the comments by the board and past boards has been, make sure you're not covering operating. I mean, you know, administrative, try and do it where the rubber hits the road. We looked at that. And we had huge requests this year, and we had to weigh. It's not that they were a bad organization. We just decided not to fund them. I will point out that none of the other counties fund them. St. Lucie County doesn't fund them, and Martin County doesn't fund them, and Okeechobee doesn't fund them. It's an unfortunate thing. It's not that we just had to make a decision. Because we fund someone does not mean they're guaranteed for 3 years. That's the maximum they can have funding from us. We're funded, I think, for 2 years, and unfortunately we looked at it and we thought that there was other requests that were better. I know that I've checked. Ms. Alexander said that other counties did fund. She said that St. Lucie did. I called them again. They said they did not. And I looked at the food bank website. We are listed, but none of the other counties are. And that's the information we're still getting from the budget offices. So I don't know. It's not an easy decision. I'm not saying they're a great organization. They also get a lot of federal money. And we're trying, well, you get USDA money or whatever. You get the ag money. And it comes from the federal level to the state level. That's how, emergency food program. So it's not an easy decision. It's just one of those hard decisions.
Any other comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to go back to the median mowing issue. Mr. Baird, you said that we're looking at $54,000 to address the median mowing issue?
It's the mowing, the position that he's discussing is a mowing at the utilities. It's not medians, it's utilities. It's the Central Plant, South Plant, West Plant, and Operations Center. We looked at it. They thought that it would be, staff looked at it, the utilities bid it, and it is cheaper to have it done outside.
What, by about $2,000?
Well, that's without equipment. The equipment costs, if you take $22,000 or $25,000 worth of equipment and you amortize it over 5 years, $5,000 a year, it's about the cost is for the position $56,000 plus. If you amortize the cost of the vehicle, it's $61,000. We got a bid of $54,000.
What's going to happen with that equipment once we make this change?
Well, we were going to have to buy new equipment presently, which that's what we were looking at. That was one of our decisions.
And it's used elsewhere, is it not?
Either two things. It can either be transferred where we can fill it in another department, or it'll be retired and sold if it's not. I mean, the equipment will be utilized somewhere or sold.
So I don't think the equipment's the issue. I think the issue is that for $2,000, are we displacing a worker, an employee of the county?
It's actually more than $2,000 because you have to buy the mowing equipment, replace it every couple of years, and the truck.
But we need it elsewhere, don't we?
We won't need it. We won't, if you won't need it in the future. That all was included.
So for $2,000 a year, we're going to lose access and control of how we do business with the grounds.
It's more than $2,000.
How much?
It's you're looking at $56,000 plus $5,000 is $61,000, and it's $54,000.
Another thing that's not reflected in those numbers is we've eliminated 3 utility service worker positions. Those positions also helped out with the mowing in their downtime because it was more than just for the one maintenance worker. So we haven't included that in those savings numbers, but we were able to eliminate 3 vacant positions there in the utility service workers that otherwise we might not be able to get by with just this one maintenance worker doing all the mowing.
Plus, we didn't even include the cost of overtime. You always got some overtime with it, and we didn't include that. We were trying to be when we looked at this number, we wanted to make sure that it wouldn't be criticized that we were inflating it.
Thank you.
What's your pleasure, Commissioners?
Yep, for a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the tentative millage of 3.0526. That's 5% below rollback.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move to adopt the tentative budget of the proposed budget tentatively of $83,520,452.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We move now to the MSTU. The proposed millage for that is 1.0835 and is 5% below rollback. And the proposed budget is $30,014,316. With that, we'll open up the MSTU for public comment. Is there anyone in the public who would like to be heard on the MSTU budget? Is there anyone that would like to be heard? Hearing none, we'll close the public source for comment. And commissioners, do you wish to consider any proposed changes? Hearing none, can we get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the tentative millage of 1.0835. That is 5% below rollback.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Davis?
I move to adopt the tentative budget of $30,014,316.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Say aye. Like sign, opposed. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. For the transportation fund, there's no millage, but there's a proposed budget of $17,381,183. Is there anyone that would like to be heard on the transportation fund? Hearing none, closed for public comments.
I move the proposed budget of $17,381,183.
I'll second that, Mr.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Emergency Services District. Proposed millage of 1.7201 and is 3% below rollback. The proposed budget is $32,168,398. We'll open this up for public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on the Emergency Services District?
Mr. Coffey would.
Mr. Coffey?
I know there's a lot of talk about dual certification and how much money it was going to save us. As I look at the budget, the salary increases is 6.62%, which is about $846,000. The benefits have been increased to $121,000. Operating expenses have been increased to $385,000 plus, a total of $1,353,920. Now, I recognize that there are benefits in having dual certification. A lot of people said that we had dual certification, the cost would come down. Well, I don't think that's quite right. The reason there's a big reduction here in Emergency Service District is because of the buildings. We have a capital decrease of almost 40%. Because they had built the fire stations that they wanted to. And I know yesterday there was a presentation about some more spending as far as the emergency district is concerned, as far as new fire stations or moving fire stations. And so as I see, I think it's going to be even more difficult to get the money to continue at this level here. But I certainly believe in dual certification as long as the people can use their skills, because I believe that is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Mr. Chesney?
Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Wayne Chesney. I live in Emery County. I'm here tonight to ask to try to get the same level of service throughout the county. And what I'm talking about is Station 6 and Station 11. Station 6 being the moorings, Station 11 being 510 and A1A. I'd like to see this get some more employees there to get it up to the same with the rest of the county. Right now we're down one employee per shift. So we're talking a total of 7 people for both stations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chesney. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Mr. Johnson?
Yesterday at the County Commission meeting was discussed various different shifts of personnel in various stations. And one of the items was the purchase of the land from the state on fire station for South County on 43rd. It's not clear to me why we necessarily have to purchase that land from the state, why we can't get a grant or something for that property. And the next question would be, when do we anticipate that that fire station will be completed?
As soon as they approve the grant.
The state forestry division had their office there. They decided to surplus it. The state's surplusing and consolidating, trying to reduce their budget. So they offered it to the county for fair market value. There was no grant. It's 3.9 acres. We're buying it for $380,000. As soon as we close, we figure it'll take a year to 18 months to build the station, and at that time we'll man it. That's a very busy area in that zone and station, and we need additional stations. So we thought that we've been looking for a property in that area for over a couple of years, and this came available.
Any other comments from the public?
If I could just make a quick comment on that.
Yeah, I got some questions.
In particular on the site off of 4th Street. That site became available to us because of some joint cooperation between the school district and the forestry department that moved off of 41st Street, South Gifford Road. And so, and because of that collaboration, they were able to have a little bit of educational opportunities with the Division of Forestry near their ag department. And certainly enjoyed the opportunity for us to be able to get a piece of property, because the original location for that fire department in the south end of the county we struck out on, that wound up being a stump dump. And so we were fortunate to be able to take advantage of that for the residents of the south end of the county. And so kudos to the school district for that move and that cooperation.
Thank you. Any other comments, commissioners? I have a couple. Why do we have the different manning at the different stations? Could you explain that to me?
Yes. When we decided to initiate, or we had a study to consolidate, go to fire consolidation, and in that there was a recommendation to reduce the staffing at station 11 and 6. In fact, the recommendation was to pull ambulances. We did not do that, but we did reduce the staffing. And it's part of consolidation. The part of consolidation supposedly was going to have, number one, there was 2 reasons. One, that you'd have someone trained, whoever arrived on the scene eventually would be trained in all disciplines. Second of all, you're supposed to need less people. If you don't need less people, I don't know why we consolidated.
Well,
I think we should look at, because if we're going to add all these people back in, and it's going to require more people at the stations, and I think then consolidation definitely didn't save money.
Well, my question is, though, is if it takes, what is from yesterday, there are four positions at the 2 beach stations per shift. Is that correct? I see John King here. John, is that? Would you give me the manning levels of those 2 stations versus the other stations?
The stations that are on South Beach and the station that's at 510 and A1A, I have 2 personnel assigned to the engine and 2 personnel assigned to the ambulance.
4 people.
4 people. At the other stations, I have 3 personnel assigned to the engine and 2 personnel assigned to the ambulance.
Okay, and my question is why do you need 3 at certain stations and 2 at 2 other stations? I just want to understand how that works. I mean, does it take 5 people to run the operation safely at the other and only 4 at the 2 beach stations, or what's the difference?
Part of the discussion is that The other stations have a higher workload, and it's not uncommon for the engine to be on one event and for the ambulance to be on another event. And you need a minimum of 3 people in those engines to have a safe work team. The only place that it will work as a 4-man station is if you have a slower station. Most often, if you were to have a fire that were to occur in those areas, the ambulance would also be with the engine. It doesn't mean that there are times where the ambulances are pulled off the beach and the engine stays in zone, the ambulance has gone to the hospital, and they only have 2 people there. But again, a lot of it has to do with workload. There's just less work.
Maybe I'm a little slow, but if you got 3 people to run an engine safely for a fire on this side of the river, why wouldn't you need 3 people to run an engine on the other side of the river if you have a fire? I'm not trying to be facetious.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand why we have the double standard. I mean, maybe 3's too many all over the place, or maybe 2's not enough on the other. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. I'm not sure I'm getting an answer yet.
I'm trying to answer your question by saying that the work teams at the other stations, I need no less than 3 people on the engines. And it was a decision that was made to maintain the ambulances at the North and South Beach, and to accomplish that, the staffing was changed to 4.
Are the engines different that we have on the beach?
The engines are exactly the same.
But yet it takes 3 on the west side of the river to run an engine and 2 on the east side of the river to run an engine. Is that what I'm understanding?
I couldn't argue that 4 can do the same work as 5. I couldn't make that argument. It is, but I could not recommend having less than 5 people at a busier station.
Except on the east side of the river.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes you're also running, I think that you'll see most of the time the ambulance runs with the fire truck. So the personnel, if you arrive on the scene, there's a fire, they're all going to be together to help do that. On the busier stations, you might see the fire truck out a lot, especially when you look at A1A. A1A is I'm very comfortable with it. I live up there. I live on A1A. It's a direct shot. In fact, if you look on the beach, we probably have more coverage than anywhere else. You've got 11, you've got the Riverside Station, and you've got 6. And it's a very small area when you look, the corridor there, it's very narrow all the way down. So the response is you're going down 1A, A1A. If you look, I think, how many calls did we have at 6?
Station 6 averages slightly more than 1 call per 24-hour period.
Yeah, so, they're usually running together.
But I don't necessarily know if I would want to be that 1 call to know that truck would be limited in the address. I'd like to know a little bit more about how that truck responds and what the duty and obligation is for the individuals who man the vehicles, so that the particular situation that they're responding to can be addressed the same way as the other stations that have the luxury of more manpower.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I guess the way I kind of understand the phase that the county's going through right now is similar to the school construction. And it's almost, you have to have portables at a school and need the school before you can build the school. And we clearly understand that we need the future stations in the county, and that's based on call and volume and demand. And I guess my conversations in looking at it yesterday is manning those individual stations with the 4th person is not an issue of dual certification, in my opinion. And it's not an issue of whether or not you have the call volume at that station. It's whether or not the other stations are so busy that gives you a level of redundancy where they can step in the event that we need them to. And so I see it as a backup to the North County if we have the Wabasso station ready to go. I see it as a backup to the Central Beach, as a backup to the mainland in the event that we have station number 2's ambulance out at the same time we have the ones off of 43rd. And I can't even go through all the numbers, but I know the geographic locations in Oslo. So that's what it's almost like it would be more efficient at this point. In the meantime, since we're at this awkward growing stage of adding stations because we know we need them to staff the stations for that level of a certain level of backup.
So what are you saying? You think
Well, I have several questions about it, and I guess my main one is looking at it after we get the stations built. then it would look like almost the opposite of what we're saying would be true. If we have stations there, then perhaps put, a 2 or 3 man vehicle staffing there with the vehicles in place so that they can add as that level of backup, because they're going to be another layer of protection as the population increases, and as the population increases, then we can fully staff them. But right now, we're kind of in that awkward situation where the shoe doesn't fit enough to build all 4 stations, but we've got stations that are not manned.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I think, John's looked at where he thinks we need additional stations, and he discussed that the other day. This is going to be one of the hardest budgets you're going to have to balance in the future.
Next year is going to be worse.
Well, you're talking a tremendous, if you increase this, because if you open a station, it's going to cost you $1.6 million a year to man it.
How many people is that when we open a station? Are we talking about
in
4
a
or 5?
busier location?
No. Let's take it out of hypothetical. When we open a station, the first one's going to be where? The next station we open.
My recommendation would be 4th Street and 43rd Avenue.
When we open 4th Street and 43rd Avenue, how many people are going to be there?
If we put an engine there, you need 3 people on it. If we put an ambulance there, you need 2 additional people on the ambulance each shift.
Taking away the ifs, so we're going to have an engine, or what is the plan there? And that goes back to kind of what I was saying, that if we have these others, that level of redundancy at the stations that are already existing, then could the plan be in these stations that we're fixing to open up? And would it be more economically feasible to have I don't want to call it a skeleton crew, but the less than full crew at each one of these, so that we can open up the one at Gifford, the one at 43rd Avenue and 4th Street, and the one at the Roseland's just a duplicate, or a new not a new station. It's just a.
To answer your question, if we do not have the tax money available to put an ambulance and an engine there, my recommendation would be to put an ALS engine at that site with 3 people on the ALS engine, and the ambulance would come in the near future when we could afford it.
Another thing I think you need to realize, with building being down, I put additional inspectors in the budget a few years ago. Mm-hmm. I cut everywhere else back, cut positions due to activity being down, and that you might see us do in the future. Because we have inspectors, fire inspectors.
When you say
just like everybody else, cut engineering because we don't have that much permit review. I'm down 16 positions in building because we don't need the inspectors. I did add, and supposedly they were going to be covered by fees, additional fire inspectors. I will have to look at that down the road if the economy doesn't turn around. I don't think you can treat one area different than another.
You mentioned the activity. Is that a average activity over the year? Because
yes,
season is like 3 every year. Season is bigger, and season multiplies things 3 and 4 times. And so, can you put somebody over there during season?
I would have to hire some additional staff to increase the staffing. As I mentioned yesterday, I mentioned that I use the term I'm at minimum manning each day. What that means is I have the exact number of people each day to staff the vehicles as we are now. I don't have any extras. So it would be unfair for me to suggest to you that I might have an extra person I could send to one of those 4-man stations, because I just don't have them.
Because we don't have even all the condominiums back. We don't have the spires up yet. We don't have we're still, from the hurricanes, not populated yet.
Hotels.
I anticipate as we build schools for peak, when all the children are there, we ought to, look at service for peak times. And I'm real concerned that we, on the 2 beach stations, don't have the level of service we might need.
That what John spoke about yesterday, there's a flurry of activity during certain peak times of the day, and going to the 2 beach stations, I understand the safety concern. If you only got 4 people there and the ambulance, 2 of the people are gone, and you get a fire call, one guy has to stay out there and run the engine and the pumps and stuff, which then only leaves one person going in to do the actual rescue if needed. And I understand that's not a safe operating principle. I know my brother-in-law in Fort Lauderdale, fire medic, they have a 2-and-2 rule, 2 in, 2 out. So the full complement would have to go before they could do a fire rescue. So I understand the issue there, but I think the problem is we're taking that ambulance crew and they're going on runs, leaving the two guys exposed by themselves. And if we have peak activity of accidents where the ambulance is responding on State Road 60 and US 1 during peak times, and so maybe what we need to do is just add a couple more ambulance crews to some of the mainland stations and leave the four guys on the beach, longer, I guess. And at the same time, we don't need that ambulance crew there 24/7. If we know that those accidents happen at certain peak times, maybe we just need to shift from 8 to 8 or something. So instead of having 7 people, we only need to hire 4 or something. And I think we just need to be more flexible in our scheduling to alleviate some of that crunch.
See, John, that's where I'm coming from. We're going around this circle here, but if it takes 3 people to safely run an engine when there's a fire, then it takes 3 people. And if there's only 2 people there, we're 1 short. And because of a lack of calls or so on and so forth, that Murphy's Law will kick in, and we're going to be short a person when there's a fire. And if everybody's busy, I don't know. I haven't run an engine. I'm not a fireman. I don't know but to me it seems like what I'm hearing you say is that we're kind of short-handed in those 2 stations. Regardless of whether we have a lot of calls or don't have a lot of calls, we've got an engine there that's ready to go. And if that engine has to go, I don't care if it's 1 call a year, it's got to be prepared and it's got to be manned properly, in my opinion, to handle that 1 call a year. I don't know. I'm not trying. I don't understand it well enough to argue with you, but I think that, to me, if it takes 3 people to run an engine, it takes 3 people to run an engine.
Well, I think in its simplest form, I think Commissioner O'Brien is accurate, is that 1 person has to operate the pump. And I think that the safest, you need 2 people to pull a hose line into a building. We're depending on the crew off the ambulance to help do that at those 2 stations. It's been a fiscal issue, and it's been a balance between what the call volume is and what it would cost to add additional staff.
Well, do we in this budget, if we're at a skeleton budget in the fiscal year we are currently in, and you say that we're at basically what we need to operate efficiently or function appropriately, how many additional personnel do we have this year?
We have no increase in staff.
We haven't increased because we haven't opened a station. Now, one of our concerns is we get into problems because of the shift swaps and things and like that. And we need to get more control. That's giving us a little bit of a problem. And I think that's what we're going to have to look. We'll show you some examples of how long an employee can be out before they come back to work. Sometimes it would astound you. And we're going to look at some of those examples. I think we can do anything you want here. I will say that if you want to add the positions back, I would suggest, we're going to have to cut somewhere else. We don't have any money. We never cut the positions. In fact, we went higher than the study said. The study said initially not to have an ambulance there. Usually the beach on Station 6, I can't recall, and I'm sure it has happened, usually the ambulance and the fire truck run together there. And in most places they run together. So they'd be out anyway if they got the call on the fire. Plus, in the case of the big moorings fire we had on the building, the high-rise, you needed the ladder truck. It came. And the study had recommended not having a whole crew at the station. The main station, we have additional ladder crew as well as a regular crew. The study had recommended not doing that. We did not go along with that either. We said we needed a full complement for the ladder as well as the regular fire truck there. We also did the additional staffing of 1 person and kept the ambulance there. We didn't do 1 person, so we kept the ambulance there. We thought that was a good idea to have it roll with it. That was a decision. It was additional above what the study had proposed. We actually went above the level of service in that respect.
Where would we cut if we did add those positions? It would be in the emergency services budget?
Yeah, it'd have to be emergency services because you're with that cap, or you have to go.
Mike, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael Zito, Assistant County Administrator. Just to follow up on what Mr. Baird was relaying to you with the evolution of that decision, it really came about with the recommendation of the consultant to man the engine with 3 fire medics. However, due to public input, we decided to keep the ambulances on the beach. And the theory was that because they always run together, you would actually end up with 4 responding fire medics to the scene as opposed to 3. That decision also enabled us to save 1 assistant chief's position that was recommended for elimination. So there was an evolution to that decision. It was not easy, but it did preserve the ambulances on the beach, and at the same time, one way of looking at it is it actually adds an additional fire medic once we're fully consolidated to the scene.
Mr. Johnson, did you want to?
Why is that?
Well, because if you're running as recommended, if you're running the fire truck with 3 fire medics and no ambulance, then there's only 1 apparatus responding to the scene and 3 fire medics. With what we have in place now, you actually have 4 fire medics responding to the scene.
But wouldn't it make sense, though, if we could, and even with the dual certification, I've always envisioned the role of a single-role medic or single-role fireman still to be necessary to a certain extent, even with a new hiree while they're getting trained. And, I mean, in the instance like this, we could put either a single-role fireman there or a single-role medic on there at one of these 2 stations. And what that would allow is for that fourth person, you'd have 4 people that could be dual certified and 1 of them single rolled, and it wouldn't matter which side they were single rolled certified on, because you'd have the 4 that could go in the box or on the fire truck. And I guess really, as I look at this, I like what you're saying and how it relates just to the service area. But I'm kind of taking a step back from just the service area and looking at it more as a backup to areas that we are admitting are seeing a higher volume of calls, and our response to that admission is we're building new stations. And to me, I can't help but think that this is quite possibly the cheapest way to provide adequate service before we take the total step and the expensive step, as Administrator Baird said, of staffing the new station on 4th Street.
Yes, it does provide interim flexibility, and that's what we need going forward. One of the other deviations from the study that we did retreat from was the attrition of single-role firefighters and paramedics, and we've actually gone to great lengths to preserve positions for single rollers who opted not to become dual certified. Right. And it was certainly recommended that those folks would be phased out as quickly as possible, as their single role status was becoming obsolete in a world that's moving into dual certification.
But with that being said, so am I hearing y'all say that the role for a single role medic or fireman, there's no longer a place in the department for anybody like that? I mean, I never envisioned.
Not in this department. In departments across the state, it is a shrinking status.
Well, and I do understand that, but I've never envisioned a full staffing of all dual role personnel. I understand that that may be what we're hiring now because that's the demand. That may be what we're training now because that's what we need. But we're going to get to a point where we still can have the opportunity for single role medics and single role firemen, and quite frankly, it'll be at a discount to us because they'll be able to utilize just their talents and their abilities in a single role, and I don't have a problem with that. That's kind of where I envisioned this whole thing going in the future.
We have a place in this system for all the single role employees who choose not to become dual certified or cannot meet the mandated requirements to become dual certified. I have a place for all of them until they retire.
What about the future, though, John?
There may come a time in the future that we don't need totally dual certified people. But right now I need dual certified people.
That's why I understand the impetus of us hiring only and training those to be dual certified. But I mean, looking past today, and down the road, I just want to make it clear that I never envisioned a full staff of all dual certified individuals working for the Indian River County Fire Department.
I think you have to look at Station 11 and 6 as this. We probably would have, if we had done what was recommended, you'd have basically had an ALS engine.
Yes, correct.
At Station 611, we decided to add the transport component by leaving the ambulance. That's all we did because of the small. So what we did is we tried to actually compromise and add a little additional service, which might have got us in trouble. It would have been an ALS engine, a fire truck, with no ambulance. We decided to keep the ambulances on the beach and have the transport mechanism with them, and that's what we were trying to attempt.
Commissioner Fleischer, did you have something?
Mr. Baird, we don't have that equipment. We don't anticipate having that equipment for how long?
Well, the equipment's on the ambulance presently. The ALS, right now, if we were to take that ambulance out of service, we'd probably put the equipment on the.
That's correct. If it's your suggestion,
it's in the
is there
ambulance
equipment
present.
at Station 6 ALS equipment, yes, there is. But I would not recommend to you to take that ambulance off that South Beach. I think it needs to stay.
Absolutely. How much will it cost us?
I don't have the staff to make every engine right now an ALS engine. In fact, our goal is within the next 6 months to have 2 ALS engines in the fleet, and we'll grow it from there. It takes time to get people trained, and we don't want to reduce our standard of care to the community as we're moving in that direction. I would tell you that around the end of October of this year, I'll have about 90 dual certified people out of about 217 that's on the street. So I think we've made great strides. Almost 50% of the organization has moved that direction. So I think we've done a lot to move what the board wanted us to do, but I don't have enough fully trained people today to make every engine an ALS engine.
And how much will it cost to fully staff Station 6 and 11?
Jason can probably answer that question, but it's 6 employees.
It's 6?
I'm sorry, 7 employees.
7?
I'm sorry, my mistake.
We've estimated the cost for 6 base level starting salary.
Would it be base level all 6?
All 6, or all 7, yes.
7.
And I worked this out with John, what exact positions would be needed. Fire medic positions, 7 of them would cost about $433,000.
Well, why would we need fire medic positions for those?
Right now, we're hiring all new employees are required to be fire medics within 1 year of employment. I would not suggest we back off of that.
No, and I'm not, but we have existing personnel that are single role.
So could they not be assigned to 6 and 11?
That's what I'm thinking.
As we expand and grow, and perhaps the new stations be the ones that are of limited manpower as they begin to relieve the pressure and the demands of the existing fire stations?
In the last year, to answer your question, we have hired people who were a firefighter EMT. They were not a paramedic, and they had to sign a pre-hire contract that said they would get their additional certification within 1 year. So we do have some that's out there that's new within a year that are not dual certified yet. And so it would be my goal that we continue to hire in that fashion.
What's their salary? What do they start out with?
If they're not dual certified, it's $34,000 and something, and if they're dual certified, it's $36,500.
So, okay, so the $400,000 figure that Jason threw out, dual rolled or dual certified individuals, you just only deduct $14,000.
Yeah, plus benefits. Their benefit factor is about 60%. That's how high the benefit factor is for public safety. I think that when you look at it, it wasn't an easy decision, and we actually did more than it was required. One of the things that we were trying to do is over time we're trying to get more dual certified people, so we're only hiring people who are going to be dual certified. We've got that shortage, and that was our shift through attrition and retirement.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make it clear, Mr. Baird, I understand exactly what you're doing. And in fact, on the stations on the barrier island that we're doing with the 4 individuals with a box and with a fire truck, I understand, and that's smart. And in fact, I would almost like to see that duplicated as we open the new mainland stations, and because it offers that maximum coverage for the least amount of staffing, therefore getting the largest bang for the buck. Right now, the exact, to my opinion, is the opposite, though. And today, before we open those stations on the barrier island, before we have the opportunity to have any level of backup, right now the cheapest thing, in my opinion, we can do is to fully staff those other stations that we currently have there, already have with 4 people there with a box and with a fire truck, to be able to take care of the excess calls that we know we're having, hence the reason why we're building more fire stations. And if I'm not mistaken, spent at least $2 million yesterday
Not quite that much.
It wasn't $2 million?
I don't think so.
Okay. Seemed like $2 million. Oh, I know what it was. It was the land up in Roseland. That my bad. It was 2.39 million on fire station property, but not all of it was for new stations. But that's my point, and I just think that would be if we could afford to do that, and I don't know what it would cost. But if that $400,000 figure, I'd like to see some options about where we could still meet our budgetary requirements that we need to, and to be able to make a step in that awkward fit that we have.
Mr. Johnson, you've been so patient. Thank you.
Well, we have a great elite volunteer police force that works for Roy Raymond. They train volunteers, they drive around, and they have menial duties. And it may be appropriate to have a elite fire volunteer corps to supplement our manpower for our fire stations. I don't know if we have it now. I don't know.
We actually do have volunteer organization now. We have one in Sebastian. I have one in Vero Beach, and the one in Vero Beach has been active since about 1923, and the one in Sebastian since the early 1970s. And I do have active volunteers who give a good time to the community. They work very hard. My problem is that most of them work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And when they are available, they're not available during the peak periods. And
I think if you put a little, revitalize that volunteer corps, and you could maybe establish something like the sheriff has that supplements, and we do get, I know from agriculture, there was a person that came down to Vero Beach with me that was a medic, fire medic, and he worked and I think that we have these folks retiring into our communities like retired policemen from up north, and I think that may be a help too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other comments, Commissioners?
I think the goal should be to man the beach stations with the same amount of personnel as the other stations.
I agree.
I think we should really sharpen our pencil and see how we might make this happen.
Is that a motion?
Well, I would like some more work done on this and to see how this could happen. Don't want it to put us in the red. So you have to be clever, as you two men are, plus your staff. So, I mean, how can we make this work?
That magnitude of number, I couldn't do without cutting significant cuts. There isn't any money left. I don't know how I could do that without. I couldn't do it this year with. What is the problem? Is this 3% that I'm required to go below rollback? I mean, it's got us in a bind. It wouldn't be a problem if we could raise the millage this year, however, the way the state legislature has done, we can't do it. I don't know what kind of vote it would take. We've already got the trim out. I can't go above the millage without sending first-class notice, so we would have to cut, and I'd need the Commissioner's assistance at what to cut in this budget to make up those kind of numbers.
Well, what if we began this process and did one station?
Let me look at cutting some of the fire inspectors. I think that's because the revenue's not coming in.
How many fire inspectors do we have, John?
How many do we have, John?
I think I have 7 fire inspectors. And we hired 2 people approximately 4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I did not hire any since that period, and so I've been working with the same amount. Just so we don't understand on the fire inspectors as well, is that fire inspectors do re-inspections too, so it isn't like they just do inspections until a building is done. There's re-inspections, and we have certain things that are on our list that are important. For example, our priority ones include nursing homes, hospitals, adult living facilities, daycare centers, the schools. All those are in the priority ones. They get inspected every year. And then we have others that we have called priority 2s and priority 3s. We may only enter those buildings every 2nd or 3rd year because they're of a different category. So that's how we prioritize them. and we know the priority ones have to be inspected every year. And then we still have some new construction that's coming through as well. Again, the fire inspectors don't normally do inspections on single-family homes. They're limited to industrial, commercial, multifamily. Yeah. That's been the bulk of our work. And so,
I need to ask a question here. I mean, if we're having this much difficulty adding 2 positions to 2 existing stations, how in the world are we going to open up any more of them on the mainland?
We have to take a long-term approach to this. That's why we've got to be careful. I don't know what we're going to do in the future. This year, the law is a little different, how it's done. Next year, the law is a little more lenient in that you can pass. You don't go to rollback. You don't have to go to referendum. So the law is just a little different this year. Okay. It's better next year. We're going to have to make that decision. I think you're going to need a unanimous vote if you go in those years, unanimous by the commission, in those years that we add stations. So it's going to be very hard. We're in a real tough predicament. Well, we would love to deliver a lot more services. It's just a very hard situation. We've got salary money in here. I could take it out, raise money, and add those positions. That's another option.
What I'm hearing here, a consensus to kind of trying to wind this down. One, we can't raise this without, after the trim notice has gone out, so we can only cut the budget at this point. But what if I understood Mrs. Bowden, then she'd like to look at this. So what if Joe, if there's a consensus here, that Joe goes back and comes back with a couple of options that we can weigh and see at that point in time whether we want to do it without changing the millage of the budget. You bring it back to a meeting in a week or two, and we can get back in this discussion again and find out what our options are and what the commission's willing to do and where we're at with this. Is that?
I don't think there'll be any easy decisions. I can tell you there's no money in this budget. I know it's going to be, because if you look at this percentage of the budget that's in salaries, most of this budget is salaries besides renovating the new stations. If you were to take out renovating the new stations, 80% of your cost is salaries and manpower.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to make it up there, and that's so hard because I'm in this year. It says this year's a very hard year. Maybe not this year, maybe the future years where we're allowed to go without referendum above that cap, we could look at it. But I don't think the next coming year you can. Okay. It's that strange law that was passed at the last minute by the state legislators that have got us in this box this year. If we can get through 2007, 2008, we can come back in 2008, 2009 with adding the stations, all these other options. I think that's the kind of room we're going to need. Unfortunately, we've been hit by a hurricane. We've had to renovate stations. It's just a really tight. I just wish there was something we could do.
I think that's a little too long to be looking at foresight. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to direct Joe Baird, staff, to review any and all options to maintain in the current budgetary constraints that are before us, and present the options and possibilities to staff stations 6 and 11 to the same staffing levels that all other fire stations are across Indian River County.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second.
I'd like to know what kind of cuts we're looking at. I mean,
it's going to be in salary. I'm going to have to cut personnel in other areas of that department. I just don't know where I'm going to get that kind of money.
Yeah, this is a very lean budget.
Raise money. I mean,
I understand that about budget, but
there's a pot of money, Commissioner Fleischer, that we have to work with. That pot of money includes salaries. In addition to salaries, if you review the present IAFF contract, there's at least 10 to 12 incentives that all contribute to this pot of money. For example, if a firefighter's supervisor goes to the doctor for 4 hours, they get out-of-rank pay. This all goes into the pot of money. We can look at it, but it's just remolding the same clay. And the idea is, with Kelly days and incentive packages, these add up to significant costs. Ironically, if we had listened to the consultant, the idea was to phase out your more expensive single-role firefighters, and we could probably hire 3 fire medics if we were to eliminate one seasoned single-role firefighter. Not that I am recommending that we do that. I have great respect for those that have done the job for years and have that expertise and can train the new folks. But from a purely pragmatic point of view, that was one of the recommendations that was made. So we can look at reshaping that, Clay, but we're going to have to get very creative with some of these expensive incentive packages and Kelly days and additional benefits that we provide.
As I understand the motion, it's asking Joe to look at this and come back, and then the commission can make that hard decision whether they want to do that or don't want to do that. I mean, I understand the position you're in, Joe, and I understand that position, but I think what the motion is, if I understood it properly, what Mrs. Bowden said earlier is that let's look at it, bring it back, and then it's on us to say, yeah, we want to cut here and add there, or we don't.
We might decide that what was before us is the best.
Yes,
I mean,
that's a possibility.
Okay.
Distinct
I'm
possibility.
going to need some time on that. If you give it more than 2 weeks, I mean, because we're going to have to set this millage rate. We can't go above it.
Yeah.
You understand we can't go above
We're locked in there.
We're set with the millage rate. My concern, this is all about public safety. And we're looking at the fact that we're looking at a consultant's opinion several years past, and we're looking at our current budget constraints. And we have to see through both of them. I didn't say this task was a simple task, and I agree, Mr. Zito. There are a lot of things that should be looked at with a keen eye, and perhaps maybe the firefighters might want to assist us in making that option as well.
Thank you,
There may be some concessions in order to ensure public safety. But I believe in the great efforts of providing that service to the public. I think we all have to band together. These are tough times economically. Yes, there was a consultant's opinion, but I don't think it should interfere with public safety.
The other thing we might really look hard at is when you bring us this hard information of what we can and cannot do, that we make a commitment. If we can't find the way to do it this year, that we make a total commitment to have equal representation on the fire trucks and the ambulances across the board.
I would suggest if you did that, we do it in 2008 and 9, because this budget year, the way we're locked in, I think it'd be very hard. The decisions you're going to make, I think, you are not going to be easy to accomplish. This budget is that tight. This budget is really reliant on ad valorem taxes. I'd rather try and phase it in for the year 2008 and 2009, have it in. You instruct me to do that, and that way we can do it. And then that year, we don't have to go to referendum. I don't know how we're going to, that big of a number is very hard to put into this budget without,
it's very hard. Joe,
it sounds like
what we're asking to do is to come back with a couple of options. They may not be workable options, I don't know, but at least we can look at it, and that's the motion. We have a second, and
does that
how about like?
Do you mind if it includes not going consolidated? I think that's something you're going to have to look at, because I don't know if you're going to say, I don't know if it's cost you too much money now.
No, I'm not. I'm not willing to do that. It's not, because this has nothing to do, in my opinion, with a consolidation issue. And all I'm asking, I'm going to stick with this millage and everything that we have here in front of us.
Exactly.
I don't think anybody's after sending out new trim notices. We've got this budget right here in front of us, and I think I plan on sticking to what we have here in front of us. Joe, if it's that difficult to come up with, it's going to be pretty simple to convince this commission that what you're saying is right. And so I don't mean to.
October, first meeting in October, Joe. Would that give you enough time?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Like sign. Motion carries unanimously. We need a motion to adopt the tentative millage.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next is we need another motion.
Move to adopt a proposed budget of $32,168,398.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Environmentally sensitive land acquisition. Proposed millage is .1357. Rollback rate in this does not apply, and the proposed budget amount is $2,417,206. We'll open that for comment. Anybody in the public want to comment on this? Seeing none.
Move the millage rate of .1357, rollback rate.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Need a motion?
Move to adopt the tentative budget of $2,417,206.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Land acquisition bonds, 2004 referendum. Proposed millage is .2725. Rollback rate does not apply, and the proposed budget amount is $4,769,192. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this? Seeing none, we'll close that.
Mr. Chairman, move to adopt the proposed tentative millage of 0.2725.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the tentative budget of $4,769,192.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. The aggregate proposed millage is 5.1726 and is 4.37% below rollback. The solid waste disposal district budget, which is a non-ad valorem, and it's a special district tax, is $44.04 per residential waste generation unit, which is $70.46 per household, which is a $5.29% decrease from the current year. $29.86 per commercial waste creation unit, and that's 4.93% decrease from the current year. And the readiness to use fee is $18.87, and that's 5.74% decrease from the current year. The budget is $11,795,955. Is there anyone in the public who would like to be heard on solid waste disposal district? Seeing none.
Mr. Chairman, move to adopt the tentative non-ad valorem assessment rates.
Second.
Our motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carried unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, move to adopt the tentative budget of $11,795,955.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. And now we need to adopt the non-ad valorem assessment charges. And these are all these special taxing districts. I guess, Will, do I need to read each one of these down through?
Yes.
Okay. Bureau Lake Estate, MSBU, is $19, and these are all per acre, parcel acre charge. The East Gifford Stormwater MSBU, $15. Street lighting districts are Gifford at $21, Laurelwood at $18, Rock Ridge at $10, Vero Highlands at $23, Porpoise Point at $13, Laurel Court at $25, Terra Linda at $23, Vero Shores at $21, Exora Park at $19, Royal Poinciana at $28, Roseland Road at $1.50, Whispering Pines $18, The Moorings $12, Walker Glen $24, Glendale Lakes $38, Floritan Beach $29, West Wabasso $21. And
Need a comment from the public on that?
any comments from the public on this? Seeing none,
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the tentative charge.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next is approval of the non-ad valorem dollar budgets. And the proposed budget is the Housing Authority, which is $162,801. The Special Revenue funds are $143,450,919. Other debt service funds is $1,244,063. Capital projects are $26,814,693. Enterprise funds are $51,475,145, and the internal service funds $26,893,884. Did I say that right? $26,893,884.
You're doing good.
Did a lot better on that one than you did the,
Any comments from the public on this? Yes, Mr. Coffey.
I think I'm on the right page. The shooting range. Talk about the shooting range, if I may, please.
Okay.
Need help. What button do I push? As you well know, the shooting range opened in the year 2001, and at the time it was open from the ad valorem tax. We had 158,000 plus some change. The next year it went to 157. Next year, 203 and 204, it went to 193,000 from ad valorem tax. The next year it stayed about the same, and then in 205, 206, it went to 195. In the year 2006, 2007, it went up $224,730 from ad valorem taxes. This year, predicted for 207, 208, thank goodness, is a decrease of about $75,000 from last year. But it's interesting to note, ad valorem tax total $1,272,050 over the 7 years. I'm certainly hopeful that we will get away from having to continue to support the shooting range after 7 years. I know Joe has been working hard to do that, and I think with a little increase in fees, it could be self-supporting as an enterprise fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Anyone else like to be heard? Yeah.
If I could, no, just to comment on that, and thank you for bringing that up. And I had in the monthly reports we had last month come through, we're getting closer. Jason was in the office just to make sure that I was able to get my mind around the monthly reports, and we're down to that $75,000 figure, if I'm not mistaken. We're getting closer and closer, but not to take away from Mr. Coffey's comments. If it's an enterprise fund, it should be designated as that. If we really don't think that we'll ever get there, then let's go ahead and call it recreation that, comes close to breaking even, and even that in itself is a positive. But it's really come a long way, and not to say that the hurricanes didn't have a major setback on them, because it clearly did, but it's moving in the right direction. And that
becoming more popular, right?
Well, yes, I guess that's a good way of putting it. More people are using it.
Yeah, and we were going to do the skeet thing. It never, unfortunately, we're having a hard time permitting it. That would have really brought
If we ever get to that, it'll be a tremendous revenue generator. I'm convinced. Sporting clays is to shooters what the golf tournament is to golfers. It's that intense. So,
anyone else want to comment on this? If not, we'll close the public comment.
Mr. Chairman, move to adopt the tentative budget for the non-ad valorem budgets.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. And the final budget hearing will be held at 5:01 p.m. on Wednesday, September 12, 2007, at the County Administration Building, Commission Chambers at 1801 27th Street, Vero Beach, Florida, which is in this building. And with that, we'll be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.